everyone who shouts hallelujah is not holy. Sometimes, the devil also wears dresses and preaches the Bible by hand. In the village of Nyanda, everyone trusted the respected Pastor Kof, a man of words, always present in prayers and advice from the community. His voice resounded since the flesh with the authority of a prophet and the sweetness of a father. For many, his simple presence was synonymous with faith and hope. It was said that he had the gift of wisdom, that his words could heal broken hearts and guide the broken. But he also had another gift, that of persuasion. His church was always full, not only of faithful, but also of promises of blessing, of miracles, and of prosperity. However, as the ancients say, the drum that makes the most noise is sometimes empty inside, and so, little by little, cracks began to appear in its image. First, there were rumors, murmurs between women at the market, suspicious looks between the ancients, doubts that were floating in the air as a Pratt and Nose storm burst. Then came the disappearance of money, gifts that never came to the needy, promises of help that remained unsaid, testimonies of people who had given everything, hoping for a miracle, and only found silence. But the most disturbing was not money. No, the most terrifying was the control it exerted on its faithful. With each sermon, each hallelujah, each he would add a little more to his will, and when someone dared to question him, the answer was always the same: do not speak against the will of the Lord. Until the day when someone dared to break the silence, a young woman, with a determined gaze and a courageous heart, decided to speak. What she revealed shook the whole village, and far beyond, because what was happening in this church, what many refused to see, was not an isolated case. It was not only Nyanda, it was not only the pastored pastor, it was a scheme that was repeated in different parts of the world. And the worst, it could happen in the church you go to every Sunday. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Mamatula was selling fruits at the market for as long as she remembered. She knew every face, every story, every secret of Nyanda. But her last moments, something didn't fit. "This man travels more than the wind," she murmured one morning, rearranging her sleeves. Before, he never left the church. Now he is in Mbiki every week. Mbiki was not just any city. It was a vibrant place, where neon lights were shining, and where music never stopped. A place where souls were lost in alcohol, the game and temptations that no pastor should frequent. The women of the market began to pay attention. It didn't take long before they noticed another detail. Unknown men arrived at the church, dressed in elegant costumes and with serious eyes. He did not attend to the officers and did not meddle with the faithful. He only asked to see the pastor in private, then left with an impassive face. "They may be emissaries of God," asked a young fabric seller with sarcasm. "If that is the case, they are too well dressed for being," replied Mamatula. Some said that the pastor was dealing with powerful people from the city. Others claimed that he owed money, and that his men came to him or asked him for it. And there were some who thought of something worse, something that no one dared to say aloud. What bothered people the most was his attitude change. Before, the pastor greeted everyone with a smile and comforting words. Now he walked fast, and his sermons, once full of hope, had become warnings of betrayal and disobedience. "He who whispers against far from the Lord, whispers against God," he declared on a Sunday, with a voice full of anger. "And God sees and punishes." Many were ill-fated to hear this tone. Why did he seem more concerned about his own defense than the guidance of his people? Then, an event even more aroused suspicions. One night, well after midnight, a luxurious black car parked in front of the church. The next day, one of the faithful saw the pastor counting a bunch of money in his office. "It's not from the diem," murmured an old man, his forehead folded. "So someone is stealing from God." Market rumors turned into conversations in every home. People began to see their leader in a different light. Faith is strong, but doubt seeps in like water in a crack. And when the crack is too big, no amount of prayer can prevent the collapse. The problem was, no one had any proof. Just suspicions, unanswered questions, and a glacial feeling in the back. Until one night, a person decides to stop speculating and discovering the truth by herself. What she lived never changed the story of Nyanda. This person was Kwame, a young Menu's apprentice who had grown up in the church. He had always admired the pastor coffee, but an inner voice told him that he had to follow him that night. Discreetly, he waited near the church until he saw the pastor coming out through a side door. His appearance was different. He no longer wore his white dress, but dark and simple clothes, as if he did not want to be recognized. He followed him through alleys and little fledged paths to the outskirts of the village. There, a man was waiting for him next to a motorcycle. They clasped their hands together, and, even though Kwame couldn't hear their conversation, he clearly saw the man slip a thick packet into the pastor's hands. Kwame's heart was beating at full speed. Was it money? Documents? Something worse? He couldn't help but doubt, but just as he tried to get closer to see better, he walked on a dry branch. The crackling resounded in the silent night. The pastor and the man turned immediately. The eyes of Kof looked into the darkness. For a second, Kwame felt his soul frozen. Did he see it? If he was being caught spying, what would he do? Abina felt the ground under her feet turning into moving sand. She rubbed her eyes, hoping that the darkness of the night played a trick on her. But the scene was still there, as clear as the light of day. Kof laughed, looking at the young woman, with the familiarity of someone who is not afraid to be discovered. His hands rested on his waist, with the assurance of the one who had already done this before. How long had she been cheating on her husband? Abina's heart broke into 1,000 pieces, but the pain quickly left room for fury. She took a deep breath, and instead of confronting him immediately, she turned her heels and returned to the village with a firm decision to discover all the truth. That night, she watched her husband with a new look. She noticed how he was hiding his phone when she entered the room. As in some nights, he said to see, "I was born in prayer in the church," but he came back with the smell of a foreign perfume impregnated on his clothes. The puzzle pieces began to get tangled up when one morning, while cleaning the house, she found an envelope slipped in her Bible. Shaking hands, she opened it and discovered several carefully folded tickets, as well as a hotel reception in Becky. Prayers. The rage was mixed with humiliation. How many times had she defended her husband in the face of the village's rumors? How many times had she proudly proclaimed that their marriage was an example of loyalty and love? She could no longer keep silence. But instead of screaming or fighting her with tears, Abina decided that it was time to do justice in her own way. In silence, she prepared her plan with precision, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal the man who had betrayed her trust and that of the whole village. Without knowing it, Kof continued to preach with his firm voice, convinced that his double life would never be revealed. But as an old proverb says, the sun and the moon can be hidden, but the truth always ends up finding a fault to shine. Abina soon noticed that her husband was not the only one involved in trouble. During these nights of surveillance, she discovered that several men from the congregation discretion